This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Cyber Frontiers, show number 1, recorded on January 31st, 2014. Cyber Frontiers is all about the exploring of cybersecurity, big data, and the technologies shaping our future through an academic perspective. Christian Johnson, a student at the University of Maryland, and I will be your hosts. Never on a schedule, but always up to date. We are broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in Bellevue, Nebraska, and actually Christian's on site at the University of Maryland, and we post the show and show notes out at the AverageGuy.tv. If you have questions, comments, or contributions, of course, you can send those to us. Contact me via email, just Jim_Collison. I know that's just Jim at the AverageGuy.tv. And you can find me on Twitter at jcollison, or now you can call in those questions to us if you just want to dial 402-478-8450. And if those questions can make it onto the show, we'll just play them in their entirety and to get those answered as we do this. All right, Christian, you and I have been spending a lot of time talking about this over the last 3 or 4 months, way back in the very beginning. So if you go back to the very beginnings of Home Tech, we branded a section of Home Tech for you called Christian's Corner. And it was meant to kind of be, in my mind, it was like a 10-minute breakout of something from you real quick, but it never really ended up that way. You know, it kind of morphed into some moments. You know, there were some times you'd bring in some deals, and there was time you would, but every once in a while we'd get these real gems where you would run off for about 20 minutes talking to us about something that you were very passionate about. And eventually, here in the last year or so, we've been thinking, you know, maybe we should break that out into its own podcast. And so we spent some time wrestling with the concept, wrestling with the ideas. A couple weeks ago, in mid-January or so, you kind of birthed the idea of Cyber Frontiers. So why don't you talk a little bit about what you're thinking with this podcast and kind of where you'd like to see it go?
Sure. So really, a lot of the communication and a lot of what you see on the internet and I think in podcast culture is very kind of specific towards either gadgetry or, you know, computing gear or the latest, you know, app coming out, and on the reverse spectrum you can find some really good education podcasts, but oftentimes they're not particularly focused in computer science, and they don't, and even if you can find something that's really disciplined in computer science, it's very rare that you find something that has an application to a specific field within computer science. So one of the primary goals in doing this is that I'm hoping to take really big ideas that, you know, the average guy really doesn't have exposure to, really doesn't interact with or even think about in their daily lives, and really taking advantage of all the resources and education that is provided at the University of Maryland and kind of spinning that off into this show in such a way that bringing these ideas behind what is big data, what is cybersecurity, what are some of these future technologies, and drawing some parallels to how they're going to change how we do things in our modern present-day computing situation. But even more importantly, I really want to dig into the historical aspects, the current event aspects, but ultimately even the technical aspects, so that an average guy who has no idea about these topics can start to get some introductory exposure, can start to look for things in the news and start to absorb some media about these areas, and also have a technical perspective. And to be honest, I'm not really sure what level of technical experience people are going to be gravitating towards who are listening to this. My hope, though, is that anyone who can log on to a computer and can get onto the internet will be able to enjoy this show. So it's really, I'm hoping to kind of interact with a large group of people, from people who have no idea about these topics to people who are maybe enthusiasts or maybe want to contribute to some content. And we're going to do that through, you know, I'm going to do some training and some examples and some demos. I'm going to do some historical discussions. I'm going to talk about some events in the news and how they're applicable. But I also really hope to get some interviews happening on the show, especially because the University of Maryland is a research institution, and we have some of the best researchers in the world on campus. And, you know, fortunately, they're very accessible to undergraduate students, and I think their voices especially are really cool and are really worth having, you know, people who aren't exposed to these topics all that often have an opportunity to listen to those professors and those researchers. And really, you know, if you're not a university student or you haven't been one for a long time, this is somewhat of a unique opportunity, because my hope is to breathe an academic perspective into the podcast, so that it's not just me sitting here rambling about something, or it's not just rambling about something that is written out on the internet, but that we really get an academic, published perspective, so that it's almost like you're gleaning off some of the benefits and some of the things that you would have if you were actually sitting at this university going to the classes that I go to, and you were either a student or a researcher of some sort. So I think there's a lot of places we can go with this. I really am hopeful that as we start to get a user base and people start to take interest, that they'll kind of bring some feedback and guidelines and what they want to see. But I'm in a really unique place with the show right now, where it's show number 1, obviously, but more importantly, it's really the first semester I've had here on campus where I'm pretty much full-time computer science cybersecurity. So, only 3 out of the 18 credits I'm taking this semester are non-cybersecurity or computer science related, which, if you think about it, that's my childhood dream, A, but more importantly, I'm getting a huge dose of this every day of the week, and I think it's important to share, A, but B, I'm hoping to make it a little bit more applicable and try and frame it towards these topics so that everyone can enjoy it, instead of just the academic user base. So.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, podcast what you already do, and I think we've been thinking about this. You've had a lot of good things in your first semester there to talk about, and so I think we're just going to take advantage of that. You're a busy guy, you got a lot of homework, you got a lot of things going on. If we can talk about some of the things you're already doing, I like the fact that you kind of say, it'll give you an opportunity to kind of feel like you're taking the classes along with Christian at the University of Maryland, and get an opportunity. Christian, I think as we move along, your career services and the folks that do outreach are going to probably want to jump on a little bit, because it's a big advertisement for the University of Maryland as well, and hopefully if we do a good enough job, they'll see it that way. Let me just do a bit of housekeeping. So you're hearing this and you think, wait a minute, where did Home Tech go? Because I'm going to drop this into the Home Tech feed for, I don't know, the first 3 to 5 podcasts will probably include this in the Home Tech feed, just so you guys who listen to Home Tech really get an opportunity to hear it. If it's not of interest to you, stop it now. Wait for the next Home Tech to come up. We continue to do those. Those aren't going to change. Christian's still going to be on the show from time to time. None of that stuff will change. It'll still be in the feed. We'll do 3 to 5 of these, and it'll drop out of the feed, and it'll have its own feed. Everything will be separate. So just so you know, if you're a Home Tech listener, don't go away. We haven't changed the Home Tech format. It's going to change to Home Gadget Geeks going forward here in the next a month or two. I got to get my act together to get that done. Don't walk away from that. Give this podcast a chance. Listen to 3 or 4. If you don't like it, it's going to disappear from the feed anyways eventually, and we'll get a chance. You'll get a chance to move over to a new feed. So that's just a little technical bit of how the podcast will actually work. Christian, let's dive right in, because you got a lot to talk about tonight. A big data is kind of the current buzzword in the industry, right? It has caught on. I'm hearing everybody saying it. I think there's some people who are saying it who probably shouldn't be saying it because they don't, they think anything is big data. Anytime data is involved, it's now big data, right? But why don't you walk us through a little bit what big data. With the other word we mention a lot is cybersecurity, and that is maybe a word that's been around a little bit longer, or at least in the limelight a little bit longer. And as we think about breaches and stuff at Target and those kinds of things, cybersecurity has really been exposed. So why don't you spend a few minutes walking through some definitions of both big data and cybersecurity?
Sure. So big data really has its origins in the fact that data has kind of gotten to this point where up until around the year 2001 or 2002 or so, we had only produced so much data. But then all of a sudden, we started producing the amount of data that we created since the time humanity existed to the year 2002 every year. And that number is just getting larger and larger. So we're now looking, petabytes is a very common kind of figure that gets thrown at as, what quantifies big data. Well, if you have petabytes worth of data, you're probably there. Or if you have multiple terabytes of data, you're probably there. But really, in terms of the world data and the amount of information flow that's happening on the internet, we're talking about zettabytes of data, which by 2020 will probably be about 35 zettabytes worth of data. And I'll let you guys go ahead and, for your homework assignment, look up how much that is, starting from zettabytes and working your way down to megabytes, and then you can divide that by the average number of megabytes a song on your iPod has, and then you can calculate how many songs on your iPad or iPod, I guess it doesn't really make a difference these days, is big data. And so really the formal definition that you'll find on Wikipedia is a term for collection of data sets so large and complex that it becomes difficult to process using on-hand database management tools or traditional data processing applications. So what does that actually mean? Well, in the last 10 years or so of how we've done data or data science, a lot of that data that we store and that we work with is databases. So the dawn of relational database management is, one of the cornerstones of enterprise computing. Most every company, especially all Fortune 500s, but most any company that has a computer in their network has a database of some kind. Whether it's a database that stores payroll data, a database that stores employee information, a database that stores research journals, a database that stores your credit card data. Everything has really, in the past 10 years, with the explosion of Web 2.0 and dynamically generating applications, has gone to relational databases. And relational databases bring a lot of good things to describing data. It allows us to put structured data in a nice way. It allows us to create relationships between different data and different tables, and then go ahead and put those in a way that we're storing and retrieving information as we need and as our applications need. And that framework has really worked so far for quite some time, and obviously is still being used as a majority in terms of where do we store our data. But really, things have started to take a shift, because now we're getting to a point where the problems that we want to solve, whether it's in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, they're much larger than one particular data set. So you really need a large data set. You really need a larger perspective in order to find answers to problems, to look for trends, and to gain analytics. And it's almost like tunnel vision, right? If you're driving down under a tunnel, you can only see so much in front of your vehicle, right? And so that means you only have so much information about what cars are in front of you, behind you, what lanes you can change into. But big data is almost as if that tunnel isn't there, and that you can see hundreds of miles in front of you and hundreds of miles in your rear view mirror. And what that allows us to do really is look for problems and look for solutions that we can't quantify with current data techniques. And what I mean by that is that some of these issues that we want to look for solutions for require processing petabytes worth of data. And your traditional script kiddie kind of solution, where you write a script or you write an SQL command and you stick it in a database, well, that doesn't really start to work to scale when you're talking about big data. In a traditional relational database world, big data suffers very dramatically, and that's mostly because you can't run anything useful across a large data set like that and get the answer within 10 minutes. You'd be lucky if you got it within 3 years if you tried to take an SQL approach to some of the big data problems that we're handling right now. And so this really has impacted a lot of industries, primarily corporate sector. We see a lot of business intelligence has found a huge place in mining big data for kind of changing business operations and finding smarter ways to do business, and really developing the business life cycle in such a way that they're making smarter decisions than their competitors, because they see that larger picture of how their company's been operating over time. So business intelligence is a huge area, but this is really going to, and it already has, but more so, I personally see that by 2020 this is going to kind of be at the next level. But big data really is something that spans more than just, how can we sell more products. I've talked about this before on Home Tech and some of the breakout sessions we've done. Look at General Electric. They just recently did a promotion where they showed how the electrical grid is redistributing electricity from different energy sources based on the data it gets back from its own grid. So your mind kind of sits and thinks, well, wait a second. People think of data traditionally, the quote average guy thinks of data as what we generate and type on a keyboard. It's a Word document, it's a financial report, it's a news article. But now the systems we're creating, and this has happened for quite some time, but I think people are really starting to see the value in it, that systems themselves are communicating and generating data. And that is why we've had such an explosion in data that really, everyone asks, well, where does this data come from? It's coming from your computer. It's coming from our electrical grid. It's coming from the very infrastructure of the internet itself. And even if you're completely away from your keyboard, and even if everyone were to step away from their keyboard, data would still be getting generated, and it would be getting generated in the terabytes per minute that it is right now. And so really we start to see something where it's a network of things. And so just as if the internet is interconnected and everything communicates through the internet is now just acting as a pipeline for data science. And so we're really seeing big data manifest itself in this internet architecture, which is really a better word is a global information system, where now it's not just about the information we put in the systems, but it's about the information that the systems that we have built are generating themselves, and they're very kind of self-describing and self-explaining. And the way I like to think of it is a quote from Shirley Ann Jackson, who I believe is the president at RPI still, and she's quoted saying, quote, "Big data and network science are going to merge, marrying the Internet of Data with the Internet of Things in new ways, and this will be world-changing. Just as in the 1800s there was a shift from electricity as a curiosity to a commodity made possible by the emergence of electrical engineering, so too now are we in the midst of a shift in data as a commodity, and more importantly as a resource, in ways not previously imagined." So we're starting to see that big data is becoming just as accessible and usable as electricity, which powers, all of the things we're talking about right now. So big data in and of itself is going to become, quote, some kind of energy source that's going to provide these next generation analytics techniques, and really a new generation of how we do research, how we do science, how we run businesses, and it is going to be truly, as she says, world-changing.
Christian, let me interrupt you for a second. Wouldn't you say that data, traditionally when we think of creating data, the PC has been the major source of data creation, but do you see us really moving away from that now, and really most of the data is being created by the GPS on our phones, right? It's being created by the phone calls that we make, the data stuff that we transfer. And I think about wearables. I mean, I've been wearing this Fitbit Force, which collects every second it's collecting data about me. This shift in big data really moves away from PCs, although PCs create data, but it really moves its way into every single thing that can generate a bit of information, right? So from weather to traffic patterns to your car. I mean, think how much data your car generates in a day. Just going from point A to point B, temperature, speed, those kinds of things, wear and tear, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, and in fact, the reality of the situation is that actually mobile devices are accounting for one of the largest sources of data in that total amount of zettabytes that I quote to you that we have. The kind of revolution in mobile devices has really, really, in a scary way, accelerated the pace at which data is being generated. So you're absolutely right, and that's quote world changing, because that device is with you. So you're interfacing with the device almost in a way where it's kind of like a second life personal assistant, where you're relying on it to be able to interface with this information grid from wherever you are, right? So that's kind of why, beyond using your computer as a workstation, to absorb and be a consumer, we now don't need anything more than our mobile devices. If we just want to be consumers, we can happily be consumers on mobile devices, and that's the end of it. And really, the only thing you're consuming on a desktop at this point is either video, multimedia, or actually doing work like word processing, writing emails, etc. But if you just want to sit back and be a consumer, your phone is the perfect place to do it. And I mean, think about all the things that your phone provides you. I mean, just the fact that you can get out to the internet from almost anywhere on a data plan, pull back a entire world history, current events, temperature, weather, the nearest restaurant to eat at, where your friends are within a 3-block radius. I mean, these devices are becoming self-generating data sources, and the more we use them, the more they become self-generating, not just in the information we are reading and using, but the information that the phone is gathering about how we use the device, which is a really big shift when you think about how applications are being developed, and you're really starting to see a much more kind of interactive machine learning approach where applications learn what it is you want out of it, but that also has much larger implications than just user preferences, obviously.
I almost see the PC as 2D and the mobile devices or wearables, because a mobile device is pretty much a wearable in a lot of ways. The way we use it, and it's always on us, it's always with us. I almost see this as 3D. In the data sets that we get, and really, I mean, that analogy starts to break down. But there's, like you said, there's so much data that it can collect in so many different dimensional spaces, because it's no longer, the PC is restricted to the home. You kind of just work on it. It's just stuff, right? You buy something on Amazon, it creates a data point. It's not moving around with you. It's not measuring humidity. It's not measuring your traffic patterns. It's not measuring how fast you're going. It's not measuring whether you're walking, riding, driving, or flying, right? All those things, and like you said, with the I don't want to say artificial intelligence, but with the almost personal digital assistant idea, you now go to the airport, and when you walk in, it says, oh, you're at the airport, you must need your ticket that's now in your email address or in your email account, so we're going to just pop it up for you, right?
Right.
And how helpful is that? So some awareness of location and all that, right? The explosion of all that is made possible by this big data concept.
Right, and really, you start to see that we are investing, critical functions of how society operates into the internet, into the grid, into the, into the information age, to a point where, you actually see people who are convinced that there's going to be an apocalypse based on the fact that if the world internet or the world grid is ever, compromised in some massive way, that we as a society will no longer be able to function. Kind of a bizarre idea if you think about it, but it's for that school of thought, it's within the realm of possibilities, right? So it really goes without saying, though, that we are, much more of our daily routines, habits, and what we rely on from other people is now just being trusted to machines to kind of remind us, tell us, hold our hand, show it in fine print for us. So it's almost
we can't find anything anymore if it weren't for the right. I mean, I remember navigating with maps. You would, before you leave, you'd look it up on a map or get directions. God forbid you get directions from somebody to how to get to their house.
Sure.
You don't do that anymore. You're like, can I have your address, or even whatever, and then you just boom, it just takes you right there. It is. I think we would have a huge navigation problem if, for whatever, if navigation GPS went down for whatever reason. Man, we'd have some lost people.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
Well, that talks about cybersecurity. I mean, that talks about big data. You also got cybersecurity mixed in with this. So, what's that all about, and how does that relate to this?
Right. So the reason why, and just as a little pretext, so really I would say I would define big data as one of the first things that I really saw as, hey, this is cool in computer science. Like, software engineering, software development, these are all things that help these focus areas. Don't get me wrong. And for me, having the computer science degree is going to be essential to doing these things. But, learning about big data and learning about big data techniques and implementations, that was cool for me. That was the first time I was like, yeah, I can do this. This is something I'm interested in, and I think is worth pursuing for a career. And you heard a lot of great things about what big data can do, and you've really, in this show, only heard a small representation of that. Hopefully you have a kind of large image of that. But all of that is well and good until you realize that without security, it is very easy for all of those kind of big visions to go to waste, right? So cybersecurity, quote definition, the state of being protected against the criminal or unauthorized use of electronic data or the measures taken to achieve this. So that is really kind of a useless definition. So I apologize for having to read it to you. But cybersecurity is going to be much more than just, oh, I have a secure password, right? Because so let me break it down for you. There's at least 3 to 4 different kind of folds of cybersecurity that I think that we're seeing kind of unravel. We see personal cybersecurity where I have good cyber hygiene practices, I have strong passwords, I know how to keep my systems from being compromised, and my own personal things that I'm in control of, I know how to keep those things secure, right? Second form of cybersecurity, the onus is really on application and software developers, computer scientists, and corporations. So, when Target has a breach of 70 million credit cards, guess what? That's cybersecurity. That's a problem. And that's just a financial aspect, but just think how huge is cybersecurity in the financial sector. It's absolutely imperative to the functionality of the finance sector. Look at U.S. government military operations. The third fold of that is cyber warfare, and we're getting to the point where cybersecurity is oftentimes a more viable and valuable means of warfare to countries than tanks and guns are. So what does that say about what cybersecurity can do offensively and defensively? But really, from a comprehensive view, cybersecurity is going to be essential in making sure that big data isn't manipulated or used in such a fashion that we kind of become a victim and subjected to it rather than benefiting from it and making good use of it. So without having kind of that perspective of, okay, we have all of this data, we can do all of these cool things, but if we can't secure all of those really cool things, then we put ourselves at a really dangerous crossroads where we can't control the systems we're putting in place and people are exploiting them. Well, now what? And it ranges beyond the fact of, oh, my bank could be emptied. It starts from, well, guess what? New York City doesn't have power right now because a hacker overseas figured out how to get into the grid, or a hacker from overseas figured out how to use one of the data reporting systems that feeds some of that big data to control the electric grid. Yeah, he found a vulnerability in that and was able to just shut everything down. And even privacy is one of the biggest debates, and you see it in both big data and cybersecurity, and rightly so, because we can't really have privacy on the internet with cybersecurity, and we can't really control, monitor, and properly distribute and share big data without cybersecurity. So really, one focus that's going to be non-technical in future shows will be, where does privacy come into this? And at any given time, privacy is really important. Economic impacts are really important. The legal ramifications and our kind of legal perspective in different countries is important. And so you start to see that cybersecurity is much more than just the technical source code, hacker kind of stereotype that is portrayed in the news and the media. There's so many components, like I said, from the out-of-date legal policies that we have to the fact that we really do a terrible job of studying the psychology and the motivations behind cybercrime, cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, and that's where criminology actually plays a huge role in a digital age where it used to not really have as much of a place beyond forensic analysis. And so in the program that I'm in here at the university, it's a first-year program. It's the first honors college program in the country for cybersecurity, which says something. It says that this is an issue that we need to take seriously. It's an issue that corporations care about. It's an issue that corporations are willing to hire and pay people about. It's an issue that the government's willing to hire and pay specialists for. And it's clear that there's a huge deficit in talent, knowledge, understanding, and interdisciplinary awareness of cybersecurity. And so the ACES program is really one of the first kind of unilateral responses from the university corporate sponsors and the state of Maryland in saying, we need to start training people to understand this, because if we don't, you know, there are consequences and there are ramifications of not developing our security practices as much as we do our new and cool innovations. And so we're starting to see that, you know, other universities, obviously by no means am I suggesting that, you know, Maryland is exclusively the cybersecurity resource. In fact, there are a lot of other universities doing it. But I would say that the University of Maryland is really at the forefront of cybersecurity. In terms of the research that takes place here, the faculty that we have that focuses on cybersecurity, the focus on undergraduate and even K through 12 education. There is a pipeline that the university is establishing of cybersecurity professionals that starts from day one. It starts from kindergarten and goes all the way through postgrad studies. And you know, even though as a university we're only really focusing on undergraduate and graduate, we really look at the whole picture, and our administration and our researchers really look at the whole picture. And we have K through 12 programs. We do interactive talks. You know, we're working on actually having some students from our program do community outreach to other high schools, talk about cyber hygiene, cyber awareness, etc. And you start to realize that not only is this a big issue, but Maryland really has a very interesting and I think a very practical approach to trying to solve the lack of education in this area and also promote new ideas, new approaches, new methodologies. And so I would encourage you to look at cyber.umd.edu. I'll probably reiterate some of these links in future shows if you haven't listened to the show. Cyber.umd.edu. That is the home web page of the Maryland Cybersecurity Center, which, let me tell you, is one of a kind. I'm really fortunate to be a part of it. I've begun doing research for the Maryland Cybersecurity Center this semester, and so there's really a lot of cool stuff just in research that's happening at cybersecurity. I'd also encourage you to look at the Advanced Cybersecurity Experience for Students. That's the honors college program that I'm in here for cybersecurity. That's you can find that at aces.umd.edu. And I would also encourage you to look at umiacs.umd.edu. That's just more general advanced research topics and areas in computer science. That one's not really entirely applicable to this show, but is of interest. And of course, if you want just more general information about the University of Maryland as a research institution, just go to umd.edu.
Christian, talk a little bit about, you talk about the investment the school is making there into this education. I know there's a new building going on. What are they building there, and what do they hope to achieve with that?
Sure. So we have a corporate sponsor for the program, Northrop Grumman, who has invested, I believe, $1.2 million in the launch of the program, and is really a gift from the Northrop Grumman Corporation, and came about through a strong collaboration and partnership between the university, between the state, and between corporate sponsor, Northrop Grumman, the Business Higher Education Forum, and some of the leaders in that forum, including the CEO of Northrop Grumman and other leaders in the Maryland area, have really kind of come together to create this program. And so its goals are somewhat twofold. One is addressing that interdisciplinary approach that we're not really seeing at other kind of cyber-related efforts that are taking place in education. Really, yes, technical is widely important, don't get me wrong, but interdisciplinary is also essential to solving some of the problems that we see in industry with cybersecurity. And so we have the ACES program is a 4-year undergraduate program. It's what's called a 2+2. So you're going to get 2 honors citations by staying through for the whole program. And ACES 1 is particularly geared towards that interdisciplinary approach where you're getting courses on ethics, economics, legal implications, privacy implications, and technical, kind of the foundation of the technical skills. And then ACES 2 is really upper level dedication to the technical aspects, but it really gives you a nice overall well-rounded approach. And what Northrop Grumman has done is really stepped in as a corporate sponsor to provide the funding to launch the Honors College, which is a living learning program at the university, which means that all the students in that particular Honors College live together. We live, we eat together. We're on the same 2 floors of our dorm, and we're living and learning. That's really what it is. So we end up in classes together. We end up going out to get dinner together. We end up staying up to 3 o'clock in the morning together. And what does that really mean? It means simply the fact that you get a much more enriched experience when you're around the same people 24/7 than when you're just with them in the classroom. And some of the best ideas I got last semester didn't come from when I was sitting in the classroom. It came from, 11 o'clock at night, sitting with a couple of my pals, talking about cybersecurity, and, bam, there's the idea. And so you'll actually see one of the hallmark achievements of what we do here is we just have whiteboards everywhere. People just write stuff. You walk into the Maryland Cybersecurity Center, all 4 walls are just plastered with algorithms and cyber approaches, and so it's really just a flow of ideas, but it also encourages that community aspect. We have really great social experience. The group is very tight together, and it really kind of helps encourage learning and doing advanced work. So that's really great, right? And that's why Northrop Grumman invested in building this new state-of-the-art dorm room for the ACES program, which we'll be sharing. We'll have 2 exclusive floors for our ACES students, which will be freshmen and sophomore next year. We'll also be sharing that space with Digital Cultures and Creativity, which is another honors college program at the university. And so it will be, let me tell you, it will be the premier place to live on this university campus. And if you've ever had to go through the struggle of basically shopping for places to live in the Residence Life program, you get assigned a priority code essentially, and that's a calculation of a bunch of different stats in your kind of history, academic, etc. at the university, and you have to have the highest priority code possible if you're not in the honors college in order to stay in that place. It's it's at the top rating for people who aren't. But if you're in the ACES program, great, because by virtue of being accepted into that program, you have the right to live there. And really, what it is it's a state-of-the-art facility. So it's LEED certified, meaning it's a lean green fighting machine, and the contractor is Clark Construction, and they've done a really fantastic job putting that together. And it's, we just walked by today. It's absolutely gorgeous. We're hoping to get some of the students to do a walkthrough relatively soon. But really the idea is that, so again, living and learning, there's going to be, if you've gone to college and you have your memories, and we're staying right now with the engineering honors college students because our new home is still being built, so to speak, and the laundry machines are on the ground floor, and the walls are all the jail cell concrete.
What's wrong with concrete block walls that are next to
I have no problem with it. Apparently other people are just totally thrown back by it. It doesn't bug me at all, but so it's a bit of a dated place we're in. I think it's fine again, but don't get me wrong. And we have our lounge, and everyone shares the same bathrooms, and it's all traditional suites, which is 2 people to a room, and this new facility is going to be suite style. So it's going to be drywall. It's going to be 4 to a room, nice little suite, shared bathroom amongst the 4 students instead of kind of the community hall bath. There's going to be a separate social lounge and a study lounge. But the really big kicker for the ACES program is that, so we have a Northrop Grumman conference room. There's going to be places to do conferences. All of our classrooms will be right in the same building we're living in. So, right on that same building within the campus, we're going to be living and learning. And on the ground floor of that facility is going to be a state-of-the-art cybersecurity facility exclusive for ACES students, where we'll be able to do research in cybersecurity quantification, which is really exciting. It will also be hooked in directly to the internet backbone. And you're probably sitting here, well, how is that possible? Well, the University of Maryland, and I don't think many people know this, but the University of Maryland is one of 48 systems in the world that runs the internet. It is one of the internet backbone relays. And in terms of DNS, so the kind of internet, the internet backbone is really what describes the traffic kind of flowing and routing through to all of the different systems that are on the internet, right? But there's also another aspect to how the internet works, and that is DNS, or domain name services and resolution. And Maryland is what's called one of the root DNS servers. So there's what's called A through M root servers in the world, so a-root.server.net through M, so that's about 10 or 12 servers, and those are what are called the authoritative name servers that store all the data for this IP address that matches with this domain name. So google.com is this IP, theaverageguy.tv is this IP, etc. And the University of Maryland is one of those root servers. They are the 4th server in the listing. And there's no other universities in that listing. They're all, DARPA, NASA, government agencies, military agencies, ICANN, which does all the domain name work. I mean, big players on, the structure and creation of the internet. The University of Maryland is the only academic institution that has a spot on the root server list. And so we have our campus network, obviously, but then we also have a separate subnet, which is the internet backbone, which is the publicly accessible place where you can do DNS resolution. So, it really is a fantastic place to be for cybersecurity, just because, hey, guess what? We are here. We are a substantial, living, breathing, built, structured area of the internet where tons of traffic takes place, and so that's really exciting. But that also means that I get to go home and download an ISO off TechNet at 500 megabytes per second, and I download things in about 2 seconds instead of the usual 2 hours that it takes for most people to download a whatever large file it is on their home connection. So that's really going to be a fantastic opportunity for students to do research, learning. It's all right there. Like I said, the idea behind it is that living learning is all in one building, one place, and it's going to be the home for the cybersecurity students. And I think it's made a big impression with the students here. I think a lot of people are incredibly excited about it. Going forward, it's going to be one of those things where, yeah, you're getting your education from your computer science degree and so forth, but you come back to your home base where, the students that I go to school with in the cybersecurity program in ACES, some of them are computer science majors, some of them are math majors, some of them are economics majors, really nice cross-discipline engineering majors as well, of course. They would be very angry if I left them out. But really having all of those different academic fields, we're all doing ACES, but we're all doing these different things as well that are technical or non-technical in nature, that really makes for a conducive learning environment where we can explore all these things and do the level of research that we want to do. So that's kind of the vision. That's where the funding's going. That's where the program support's going. Obviously, things are kind of very dynamic, and this first ACES cohort has somewhat of a leadership role in defining how this program's going to look, but more importantly, providing the feedback and the experiences that are going to make it, a really top-notch program for future students coming in. And the university has already done regular admissions decisions. I've started writing letters to our top talented students who have applied to the university. And so it's really going to be a real treat to see this program unfold, because it's going to be one of a kind, but I'm very privileged to be a part of the program and to have this opportunity. And again, I'm hoping to kind of capture all of these experiences, what I'm getting in the classroom, what I'm learning, with my passion for things like big data and other technologies, and provide it to all of you in a podcast where you may get some of it, you may not get the whole picture, but you're going to be able to take away something every time you listen to this podcast. And whether it's technical or whether it's a current event, I'm hoping that you're going to become more informed about these issues, and again, not just technical, but the whole kind of spectrum and the whole gamut of what's going on here. But I'm really hoping to be able to bring the university you, and to bring the University of Maryland and the education that I'm getting here to this podcast. And so, our beginning kind of quote is, it's the podcast that's not on a schedule, but I'm hoping that this almost becomes a part of my studies, in the sense that I can recap and condense what I'm learning into this podcast. Because if I can provide you guys a good podcast, it means I'm doing my homework. It means I'm understanding and learning these concepts, because I wouldn't be able to talk about it in front of you if I wasn't getting this world-class education. So my goal is to be behind the scenes, working on my C code, working on my cybersecurity projects, taking the tests and the quizzes, and then Fridays, when I have no classes, I get my studying and stuff done before the evening, and then the evening I'm here, and I'm here to condense everything that we've been doing here the past week. I'm here to bring you that information, tie it into current news and events, and really start to unravel some of the questions that I think the average guy really doesn't get exposure to, and I think they should, because these are exciting topics and they're very applicable. And if you don't get anything else out of it, you might be able to pick up one or two fun facts that you can use to impress people you talk with at dinner. I mean, I don't really know, but I'm hoping that this is something that we can have fun with, something that a lot of people can get involved with, and I really, really hope, and hope that I didn't stress this too late in the podcast, that I want this to be a podcast for everyone. I want it to be a podcast for the student who's in high school who wants to be a computer science major. I want this to be a podcast for the 40-year-old guy who just came back from work and works as a banker and wants to learn about the implications of what he's doing in the finance sector. I want it to be for the college student who is not at the University of Maryland, or who is at a different program in the University of Maryland, who wants to augment their university learning experience. I want it to be something where everyone feels like they can be part of this online podcast learning community, and I want it to be a different feel from the podcasting that I've done from the past 3 years, and make it something where it's interactive. So I'm really going to work hard to get some really nice interviews, speak with some people, and really bring the university life and the excitement of what goes on here to this podcast.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great opportunity, Christian. I'm excited about what's ahead for us in this. And you mentioned the schedule. I kind of poked fun of it at the beginning by saying, and how did I word that? Never on a schedule, but always up to date. And trying to get the idea that we may not have a regular podcast. In fact, this might be a hard one to catch live, because Christian's life is very dynamic there. And there might be times we need to do it on Saturday or on Sunday based on a schedule. We're going to shoot for Fridays. That's kind of the goal. Won't be every single week. Maybe every other, maybe every third. Just kind of depends on what's going on around finals. That's not easy to get done. But we will absolutely be bringing relevant topics to you. Interaction is key, I think, on this as well. I'd mentioned you can send me an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. Christian is just christian@theaverageguy.tv. He's got that same email address, and you can send the notes directly to him if you're interested in something that he says and you're like, can I get some more details on it? That would be great. We got that number, 402-478-8450. You can just leave it. Maybe you're thinking of it when you're driving. Just leave that message for me, and I'll play it right here on the program, and Christian can answer that. I think you would be silly if you've made it all the way to this point. You're a home tech listener. you're a tech professional, I think you'd be silly not to come over and listen to this and give it a whirl. Listen to it in the car. Christian's got some good stuff. Just this is a natural evolution of what we've done, and it was just a great opportunity to kind of break something out for Christian and give him. You can see already, if you listen to it, he's gonna have a lot of great things to say. So we're looking forward to that as well. Christian, so maybe we should have a takeaway segment in this where we at least guarantee one solid takeaway for somebody every single show. As you think back to your last semester, you said a lot of good things that I took away. I mean, you've mentioned already the backbone idea with that university being on the backbone and being an important part of the internet, especially here in the United States. Things like that. What would be one solid takeaway you would want to leave with somebody, before they go into work? Now they're pulling in the parking lot, they shut the car off, they're waiting for you for your one takeaway. What's the first semester takeaway for you?
Okay, so I'm going to have to rephrase your question because I'm not sure if I fully understand it. So the takeaway from this particular show or from my first semester experience?
No, from your first semester experience there. If you were going to give a takeaway to somebody and say,
sure,
hey, in the first semester, this is one thing I really want to impress upon somebody that I learned that I want to pass on to you, what would that be?
Yeah, so we actually had an after show, I think, maybe a month or so back where we kind of took some of these things. And so my takeaway for this week is going to be time management. Plan ahead and really so actually I'm going to do two takeaways because I think they're very mutually informative of one another. So time management, which goes beyond just I can write a planner, I can use a calendar, I'm disciplined, I know when to sit down. But the real big thing for me that I took away in my first semester was if you're stuck on a problem, if you're stuck with something, don't be afraid to ask. If you're that guy in the classroom who doesn't ask a question because you don't understand something, you're going to be that guy in the classroom that is helping the curve for everyone else because you're going to be, lowering the bar. So it's not like you raise your hand when you go into work and say, I have a question, but, really rely on peers because there's always going to be people who are smarter than you. There's always going to be people who aren't. And it is really, especially in a university or academic setting like I'm in, I've really relied on being able to talk with my peers. And whether it's just bouncing off ideas and having a discussion or whether it's, hey, I'm here in this problem and I've taken a good look at this problem and I've gotten so far, but I really can't get past this step. What do you think? That's hugely valuable in the learning process, not just for you in resolving it, but for someone to be able to come in and teach it. It reinforces it for them too. And it's really kind of one of those good deeds that goes around because you might help someone and then find a week later that you're in a predicament that, hey, guess what? They have the perfect answer for. And why is that related to time management? Because if you're too prideful and thinking that, oh, I need to answer everything, 100% by myself, I have to reinvent the wheel every single time, well, guess what? When you're sitting there on the fourth hour on the same problem and you still don't get it, you're going to look, A, really stupid, but B, you've just totally destroyed any notion you had of time management. And it's about working efficiently and effectively, not so much about how hard you work. Obviously, working hard is important, but there is such a thing as overworking, and generally I found that tended to happen when I didn't, raise my hand or go right next door to the next door over and say, hey, so-and-so, what do you think? So whether you're at work or whether you're reading something on the internet or whatever it is, sometimes it doesn't hurt just to ask for a simple question.
Very cool. Yeah, very good. Time management, ask questions. There's your takeaway. We'll have a takeaway segment each time. See, we're kind of still figuring out the format here too. Of some of the things we want to add, and of course you can have a big influence on that as well. Christian, anything else you want to cover? We've come up on an hour or so. Anything else you want to jump in and talk about?
No, I mean, I really want to kind of let these ideas sink in. I encourage you guys to go and look at the links I rattled off to you, cyber.umd.edu, aces.umd.edu, just umd.edu. Also, like I said, start, look at your feed burner, look at your news feeds, and maybe just try and pick out one or two articles that you think might be applicable. And if you're listening to this show next time around, put them in an email to me, and I'll try and give them some context, either there's something that's going on here or just in general give my opinion about them. So see if you can start detecting these ideas, these topics, cybersecurity, big data, in the things that you're reading daily, because let me tell you, they're there. You just have to look for it. And sometimes it's right in front of you too. So I would say that's your homework assignment for the week, so to speak. And next week, I'm hoping this is the foundational layer of what we're doing here and what these topics are. So in future podcasts, if someone asks what the big idea here is, I'm literally going to say you need to go back and listen to show number 1, right? Because I'm not going to bore you guys to death. I'm just going to keep moving forward and drilling down. So my hope is that this show is kind of the home base, so to speak, where you're laying the foundation of the house, and now we're going to focus on the details of each different room in that house. That's where we are right now. So future shows, I believe I'm going to start. I think I might start breaking into some technical work the next show. There's definitely a lot that we're doing over here right now, and I also want to get some more current events and start talking about. Like I said, I touched on privacy, finance, economics, but I didn't go into detail with most of any of those. So we'll spend some time on those different topics. So just make sure you have your home base, and come back next show. Ears attentive and ready to learn and contribute, and I really hope and look forward to hearing from listeners from our current shows, from the Average Guy Network, and new listeners. I really, like I said, I want this to be something that everyone can have fun with and be involved with and feel like they're getting some secondary education from my experiences here at the university.
Very cool. Well, lots of ways to contact us. And, I'll just remind you again, Jim at theaverageguy.tv, Christian at theaverageguy.tv. You can call that in, 402-478-8450. Catch me on Twitter at Collison. Christian, do you want to talk about your Twitter? Do you want to use that in this context?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to give me a shout out, it's at TheWizBM, TheWizBM. Don't ask me how I got that handle. It's too long of a story.
It is a long one.
And I will also be rebroadcasting the Average Guy feed when it's broken off into our own podcast feed out at my website, christian-johnson.net. That feed will be incorporated, and I'll probably start posting some links and articles that are relevant to the discussions we have. And my hope is that the more feedback we get from the community, the more I'll be inclined to post and provide you guys with some outside reading and content.
Yeah, very good. This will actually sound a lot like, I'm going to use the same music that we use for Home Tech just for the next couple weeks. I want to find some stuff. I wanted to kind of feel where we went with this thing before we, kind of kicked in a bunch of stuff. We're going to stick the Home Tech logo on it for now. I'll probably leave it out of the video though, just so that it'll be a little more universal when we go forward. And just give it an opportunity to kind of marinate for the next couple shows and see what we come up with. Then once we've got what we want, we'll break that loose. It'll get its own feed. You can subscribe to it on your own if you'd like. But Home Tech listeners, again, let me encourage you, give it a couple weeks. I think you'll like this. I think the guys and gals we've attracted for Home Tech, I think you're going to like it. So sorry if I interrupted your regular Home Tech schedule on this. I hope if you made it by this point, you're probably engaged in it. It was probably okay. And we will encourage you. I will probably release this like on a Wednesday or so in the middle of the week, so that we do Home Tech on the weekends and this one right in the middle, just to get it done, and so folks will get it in their feed as well. Well, Christian, thanks for taking an hour. Stay around for a little bit. We'll chat with. There's some interesting guys out in the chat room. Maybe we can get some instant feedback from them. You'll want to follow me on Twitter if you want to get this in real time and find out when we're going to do this, because the schedule will be kind of wonky. Follow me at Collison on Twitter, and of course you can join our Facebook page, facebook.com/groups/theaverageguy. We'll get you there as well. Christian, thanks for coming out tonight. We'll do it again whenever. Whenever we decide to do it. No schedule, but always up to date. And we'll be back again to do it again. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Again, we'd love your feedback. Good night.
Good night.